Is there a chance that 2024 will be one of the best years ever for the quarterback position in the NFL? I mean, we're seeing older quarterbacks playing at an elite level longer in their career. We have a lot of good, really young quarterbacks that are already in the league, and there is a potential that the 2024 draft class could be one of the best quarterback draft class of all time. Buckle up, football fans. The quarterback position is going to be ripe for the picking this year in fantasy football. The quarterback position is going to be a whole lot of fun to watch this season. We've had some guys change teams, and we have some guys coming back from injury. And as I already mentioned, the young quarterbacks coming into the league this year may be one of the best draft classes of all time. So trying to find the top 18 quarterbacks is definitely a tough task. But I'm going to give it a shot anyway, giving you my top 18 quarterbacks for the fantasy season in 2024. And this list is not going to include any of the young quarterbacks being drafted this year because as of now, we really don't know where they're going to land. Even though Caleb Williams to Chicago seems like a lock, I'm not going to put him in here for right now. But when you get done watching the video and you hear my explanation on all 18 guys, let me know down in the comments if there's someone that you feel should have made it into the top 18, or maybe somebody was a little bit too high for your liking and you would have dropped them down. Let's have a really good discussion down below of my way too early quarterback rankings, and let's kick it off with number 1. Listen, number 1 and number 2 are interchangeable. Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. They both provide the same type of upside on the ground, but the reason that I'm going to give Jalen Hurts a little bit of a bump over Lamar Jackson is because his wide receivers are a whole lot better. And adding Saquon Barkley definitely makes that team way more two-dimensional than what we saw at times last season, even with the way DeAndre Swift played. And for Lamar Jackson, adding Derrick Henry is also going to make this offense way more two-dimensional and give them a steady production at the running back position that they haven't had in a while. But if you wanted to argue Lamar Jackson over Jalen Hurts with me, I probably wouldn't argue back. Again, my only reason why is just the wide receivers surrounding Jalen Hurts are better at this point in time. And number 3, I'm going to go with Josh Allen, and I am a little bit concerned about him potentially falling deeper into the rankings, especially if Stefon Diggs is traded. Now, as of right now, he has not been. But outside of Stefon Diggs, what other wide receivers are going to step up this year? Will Dalton Kincaid take a step forward? Can James Cook jump another level that we were kind of expecting last year that we only saw every once in a while? Josh Allen is one guy in these rankings that I absolutely could see taking a little bit of a fall if they decide to trade Stefon Diggs. And number 4, I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. And adding Marquise Brown to the wide receiver mix is an excellent win for Kansas City. But I'm just going to give the other guys in front of them a little bit of a bump up because we're typically going to see some more rushing touchdowns and more rushing yards from those guys. But we know that Patrick Mahomes is good for the yards through the air and is good for a lot of upside, especially now that they've added that deep threat back to their offense. Let's see what these top 4 quarterbacks put up this year. You could move these guys around really in any order that you want to. Patrick Mahomes deserves to be in the conversation. At number 5 and 6, I'm going to go with 2 sophomores, CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson. Now, we're looking at 2 completely different games here. CJ Stroud, reigning rookie of the year, youngest to ever win a playoff game at the quarterback position on the upstart Texans that have absolutely increased what this team could do, especially on the offensive side of the football. He's going to put up some really big numbers this year, and having him at number 5 actually feels a little bit too low. I'm really excited what Stroud and the Houston Texans are going to do. But in the same division, you have Anthony Richardson, and a lot of people will probably disagree with Anthony Richardson being this high at number 6, considering the injuries he dealt with last year. My hope is over the offseason, he's healed up and he's learned how to take less hits and find himself either going out of bounds or sliding more often. But he really belongs in a category like some of the top quarterbacks. The ability to throw the football, score on the ground, and pick up yards on the ground. If he stays healthy for a full 17 games, I just don't know how he doesn't finish inside the top 6. At number 7, we're looking for that bounce back campaign from Joe Burrow. Now, the injury that he sustained to his wrist is not one that we see very often at the quarterback position, and I definitely think it's going to be worth keeping an eye on heading into the 2024 year. But you've got Jamar Chase back, T. Higgins still there as of right now, and we'll see what they end up doing in the draft as well. But this should be a very good offense once again, and Joe Burrow should be in the conversation of a top 10 quarterback as long as he's fully healthy. You could make an argument for Jordan Love over Joe Burrow right now as well, and I'm not willing to go that route just yet, but we will keep it in mind as we keep track of Joe Burrow's return from injury over the offseason. One of the things that I look at when trying to dissect these two players is, number one, how often will they throw the football? And number two, what are they throwing to? What offensive weapons do they have around them? And right now, I just have to give Joe Burrow a little bit of a heads up in terms of what he has to throw to than what Jordan Love has to throw to. But make no mistake about it, Jordan Love is in for another fantastic year. And number 9, Dak Prescott. And maybe he doesn't show up in the playoffs, or when he does show up, he just sucks. But in the regular season, he puts up a ton of numbers. Now, they really haven't established the other wide receiver position opposite of CeeDee Lamb. You still have Brandon Cooks there. You've released Michael Gallup. Jake Ferguson took a little bit of a step forward, but you've lost Tony Pollard, and your offensive line is not going to be the same. Dak Prescott is one quarterback with a wide range of outcomes that I could see this right here being his ceiling, but his floor being outside the top 12. Kyler Murray at number 10, when he came back last season, he looked good, and this offense is going to be adding a major playmaker on the outside potentially in the draft as well. We're going to be keeping an eye on Kyler Murray, but his ability to run the football a little bit, score some touchdowns on the ground, is definitely going to help propel him. But this offense looked good at times, especially with James Conner at the running back position and the breakout tight end last year, Trey McBride. Kyler Murray should find himself inside the top 10 if he also can stay healthy. Brock Purdy at number 11, and a lot of you are probably going to be saying, Kyle, that seems a little bit on the low side. And the reason that I'm just keeping an eye on this right now and putting him at 11 is because of the potential for Brandon Ayuk to still be traded. I think Ayuk ends up staying in San Francisco, but if that were to happen, that would be a huge hit to this offense. And we know how much the offense already goes through Christian McCaffrey. For Brock Purdy, he absolutely has top 12 potential, but the ceiling just isn't what we could have with some of these other quarterbacks, especially the more athletic ones on the ground. At number 12, we're going to go with Tua. Tua is a guy that's going to whip the ball all around the field, and we know this Josh McDaniels offense is definitely going to give some fireworks throughout the season. There's going to be some up and down performances, and there are going to be some games where we look at Tua and say, man, what were you doing that game? But there's also going to be other performances with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill that absolutely lock us in and say, man, this offense is one of the best in football. At number 13, from my Detroit Lions, Jared Goff. And a lot of Detroit fans out there are probably going to be like, Kyle, why don't you have him inside the top 12? And I get it. They just run the football so darn much that for me, Jared Goff does what he's supposed to. And from a fantasy standpoint, I think he's a really good quarterback too, especially in Superflex or 2 QB leagues. But for much larger leagues, like a 16-team league, he would be towards the tail end of guys that I would be looking at. He adds basically nothing on the ground, and with as much as they run the football, he's not really going to have the elite type of passing numbers that some of these other guys may end up having. At number 14, Justin Herbert, and he's one of my biggest fallers at the position so far because really the Los Angeles offense is going to look completely different when they step on the field for week 1 in 2024. Keenan Allen's been traded, Mike Williams has been released, Austin Eckler was let go via free agency, and they really haven't added a ton back to this offense to help as of yet. Gus Edwards, okay, that's one name. We'll see what they end up doing in the draft, but for right now, Justin Herbert is worrying me a little bit from a fantasy viable standpoint in 2024. At number 15, we're going to go with Kirk Cousins, and he's got all the weapons around him. He's in a new situation, but he's coming off a pretty big leg injury, and we don't know exactly how that's going to fare for him. We'll see if he misses any time to begin the season and how well he works his way back, but getting out there with some of his new weapons is going to be absolutely critical to getting this season started on a hot streak, and maybe we don't see the type of numbers that we would like right away, and some of that comes through the middle of the season when Kirk Cousins has established time with all of his teammates. At number 16, we're going to go with Trevor Lawrence, and last year was definitely a down season. They've added Gabe Davis to replace Calvin Ridley, but from a coaching standpoint, how will the offense look this year? How will the game planning be? What are they going to do to get Trevor Lawrence going and really make sure that this offense stays stays way more consistent with way more high upside production. Trevor Lawrence for me is definitely a guy that has top 12 potential, but until I see it more consistently, I'm just not going to put him that close. And number 17, Matthew Stafford, and I think the biggest reason I can't go higher with him is number one, his own health, and number two, the health of Cooper Kupp. Those are two major question marks that we're going to have going into 2024. If either of those guys miss significant time, it's going to definitely hamper his fantasy football output. And because of that, I can't have him any higher in the rankings. Number 18, I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers. And he's coming off the same Achilles injury that Kirk Cousins is, except that he had his several weeks before and was almost darn near ready to play by the end of the 2023 season. Now, the reason that I've dropped Aaron Rodgers just a little bit lower is number one, prior to the Mike Williams signing, they really didn't have a ton of established players that we really could rely on. So when you take a look at that, it's like, all right, Kirk Cousins' weapons are just a little bit better right now than what Aaron Rodgers' weapons are. Now that they've added Mike Williams, that's great. And I think it's a good fit overall for this offense, but how healthy will Mike Williams be? Is he going to play 5 games? Is he going to play 7? Is he going to play 10? Does somehow, miraculously, he finds himself in a full 17-game slate? Probably not. And because of that, I still think this offense has a lot of question marks. They have done a good job of making sure the offensive line is a little bit better this year. And of course, you've got Breece Hall as well. I just have to give the nod to Kirk Cousins a couple of spots higher because I believe in that situation just a little bit more than I believe in this situation. Also, Aaron Rodgers, age-wise, coming off the injury he is, we'll just have to see how it works out. Man, we kind of blew through those. We ran right through our top 18 quarterback rankings as of right now post free agency. But we absolutely know that as soon as the NFL draft is done, these rankings are going to get shaken up quite a bit. So make sure you have the bell notifications on. So when we start dropping all of the good content for you, you'll know about it right away. And you'll remember, hey, if I can't watch it right now, I got to remember to watch it later. And when I get out of here, YouTube's going to recommend one of our older videos to you. Make sure if you haven't watched it yet that you check that out because the off-season content so far has been fire. For now, Headliner Nation, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you all stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.